Welcome to Wisdom on the Front Porch.
Oh, it's time for Reading Between the Words podcast, where you hear the story behind the book. You get to meet the author themselves and hear their story and the why for writing their book. Books of real life, stories that come to life. Fact or fiction, there is mystery, intrigue, and there's laughter. There may be books for business or how to overcome challenges, or who knows what the next book will be. Join us for another great book and guest right now.
So welcome to another episode of Wisdom on the Front Porch, Reading Between the Words. And here talking about their book on my front porch today is Meredith and Craig. Thank you so much, both of you, for being here.
Oh, thank you for having us. We're really excited to be here.
It's an absolute pleasure.
Oh, this is awesome. So I know the name of your book, if I have it correct, is The 200% Marriage.
Yes.
And that just sounds very interesting to me. What's a 200% marriage?
Well, the 200% marriage is based on what we learned growing up, is that a good marriage is 50-50. And what we have learned since being married is that a good marriage is not 50-50. 50-50 is a bit of a myth. 50-50 does not work. It breeds scorekeeping and resentment, and it does not work. That was a giant myth that we learned growing up. What we've come to realize is that a really solid, thriving marriage happens when you have two people who each take 100% responsibility for what's going on in their marriage. And so when you have two people taking full responsibility and ownership for what's going on, you get a 200% marriage.
That's awesome. I love that. Yeah, that's interesting. A few years back, I was actually at church and the pastor was talking about marriage, and he says it's not 50-50, it's 100%. You giving 100% all the time, even if the other person doesn't give anything. But when I like what you're saying, and what he also said is when you both give 100%, then things start working together. So there you go, your 200% marriage. So you said that you heard growing up marriage is 50-50, which most of us did. So we want to know, how did you get to the conclusion that it's 200%?
It's a good question.
Some trial and error, some falling on your face, learning the hard way, having some relationship role models that weren't ideal, we'll say. So we both come from families of divorce. And so we were preached the 50-50 myth growing up. And then also we're seeing that those relationships are not thriving. In fact, they're breaking down. And then I myself have been divorced. So, taking those relationship role models into my first marriage, it didn't go well. I applied what I learned and what I knew, and it didn't go well. And so then you learn through trial and error and through that process of, okay, no, you got to do things a little differently. It's scorekeeping, resentment. We were, bickering and fighting, and it just didn't go well, and it ended. And then going into, a new relationship, from my perspective, I have to do things differently. I have to learn from my role models and my past and do things differently. And so then we got really intentional when we got together around what worked and what hasn't worked in our past and what we saw growing up and how do we do things differently. And so we just got really intentional at the outset of our relationship to really focus on, we can control what we can control as individuals. I can control how I show up every day. I can't control anyone else in this world, but I can control how I show up. If I show up fully every day, leading with vulnerability, leading with curiosity, leaving scorekeeping and resentment in the passenger seat, and just taking control of what I can control. And so once we realize that that's what we need to focus on is what we can control, if I can do that and then you can do that, then we've got a 200% marriage.
And we say it like it's an easy thing, like, oh, just take full responsibility for everything. Full responsibility, you control you. It's not an easy thing to do, especially when you're in a relationship and something happens, words get said, and you feel like you're owed an apology, but you also know that maybe you owe one too. But sometimes it's a little easier to dig your heels in, like, you owe me an apology. I apologized first last time. It's your turn to apologize to me. Like, if any of that sounds familiar in any context, we've probably all been there to some degree. I still owe the apology, whether I feel like I'm owed one or not. I still own what I've said and done, and I owe the apology, whether I get one or not. I'm not giving an apology so that I get one in return. I'm giving an apology because what I've said requires an apology, or what I've done requires an apology, regardless of whether he gives one back or not, or whether I feel like I'm owed one back or not. That part is irrelevant. When I take full responsibility, I own my stuff and I lead with that. And if I lead first every time, that's me being a leader, and hopefully my partner comes along. But whether they do or don't doesn't impact whether I take my step and I take my ownership or not.
Right, that's good. And I'm glad you brought up that you talked about things before you got married, because that's one of the questions I was going to ask is this 200% marriage, does it start before the marriage? And, being old, I know the answer to that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. You can think you can replace marriage with relationship if you want. Like it's a 200% relationship, and it applies. Everything we talk about in the 200% marriage applies to all the relationships, right? So this book is it's our marriage. It's talking about marriage basically, but it can be applied to all relationships. So yeah, even if you're newly in a relationship with someone, dating or whatever, 200% mindset, let's say, is absolutely critical.
It applies to business partnerships. It applies to your relationship with your parents, with your kids, with your friends, with any, important relationship in your life. The same skills that make a marriage strong are the skills that make any relationship strong. It can be a little easier to work on it in the context of your marriage first to build that sort of foundation, but those same skills apply in every important relationship in your life.
Yeah, it sounds like what you're saying is when we take 100% full responsibility for us, for our words, for our actions or reactions, then it's really not so tough to do things. Yes, I messed up. Yes, I said those words too harsh. I didn't know that I was speaking that way. I'm tired, whatever it is, or even not make excuses. It's like, yeah, and sometimes you hear yourself when you say something, but you don't do anything about it. Or you do. You say, wow, that came out way harsh and I didn't mean it that way at all. But that's really good to recognize that. Yeah, in everything that we do. Anytime you have your relationship with somebody else, you have to take responsibility for what you're doing. And we may think that we do that, but we don't realize that we're not. So let's get into your book and talk about some of the things that it does to help you show how to do this. Or is that what your book does?
Yeah, it is. Yeah. So yeah, we've built it on our framework. So our framework is the 200% marriage. And so it's basically built into 6 parts. The first part is kind of like a little bit of an intro, telling our backstory, kind of a little bit about what I just told you around where we're coming from and our history and our role models and all that stuff, and how we got together, just to kind of set some context. And then we get into the 200% marriage mindset. And then it's basically built on 5 pillars, our framework. So the 200% marriage mindset, then it's the 5 commitments are the commitment to the mindset, the commitment to yourself, the commitment to your teammate being the 3rd commitment. The commitment number 4 is the commitment to fun and adventure. And then the 5th commitment being the commitment to the future, building that North Star together. So that's kind of the framework of the book.
Yeah. And we were really intentional when we wrote the book to make it fun. This is heavy. Relationship stuff is heavy stuff. Like it's when things aren't going well, it's really hard. It's like a slog through quicksand, and it can be really taxing and really heavy for people. And so what we try to do through our coaching, through our writing, through all the ways we work with people is to bring a little lightness to it, because and it's the reason one of our core commitments is to fun and adventure, because when things are really hard and heavy and not fun, as humans, we don't want to engage in it. We pull back, we stop making the effort when there's no return, like when there's no fun coming back, when we're not enjoying what we do, it becomes really hard to continue to do it. So that's one of the big reasons why fun is a key component of our framework, so that you will stay engaged in the relationship, keep doing the work, because it's because it's fun. And so when we wrote the book, we made a solid effort to, one, let our personalities really shine through and keep it fun. Like, we don't make light of it because it's very heavy, but we try to bring lightness to it so that you can actually enjoy the process of creating a marriage that you love.
It's not your typical relationship book. There's a lot of humor, levity. We do want to make sure that we honor, the struggles that relationships can bring, but also bring a humor and a levity to it, so that you're not left with that, oh, do I really have to, like, the thought of dealing with this issue or this relationship is so daunting that I don't want to do it. And so to her point, like, when you make it a little bit more fun, a little bit of levity, some humor to it, it makes it a little easier to engage in it and actually do the work. Because, like, to her point, if it's not fun, we disengage and we just don't do it. And so people don't get a result.
Absolutely. A friend of mine is in a young marriage, young, say less than 10 years. And they had a disagreement, but it was a misunderstanding of what somebody said. Now, through marriage counseling and other people I've listened to, because it's really great to watch other people's marriage to see what they do and how they handle it, so you know what to do or what not to do.
Yeah.
And one of the things that people don't realize is, when you get together, and this is even before you get married, when you start the relationship, you're bringing everything that you were taught and you knew to the relationship. They're bringing everything they were taught and they know. So maybe saying something a certain way sets off a trigger with them, because that was always a negative thing. But to you, it's like, oh, what's the big deal? And vice versa. So you have to take those things into consideration, especially when the relationship is young. Now, that doesn't mean that if these triggers are being set off all the time, that you say, oh, well, we'll get over it because we're learning each other. You need to pay attention to these and find out, are they triggers because there really is something there? Or is it that you are looking at each other? Because you don't want to get a relationship that's always work, always hard, things are going wrong, always being criticized and all of this, because that's not a healthy situation at all at any time. So you need to do your 100% and say, look, this is not a healthy way to have a relationship. In my point of view, I think this is not right. These are things that I see, and this is what it's causing in me. And then let the other person respond. Don't criticize, don't try to change their words, but sit there and listen. Everybody says we have 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason. And you've got 1 brain, so it needs to go into that brain. But it gets filtered through everything that you've gone through. So make sure what comes out is not the filtered version of, this is what my parents always did. Let it come to your heart too. Don't forget that part.
Yeah, that's a big reason why our second commitment is the commitment to yourself. So you can sort of start to unpack some of what you've learned and been conditioned through your whole life, and what are you actually bringing in? Because we're all bringing in all kinds of baggage into our relationships, and then we're tripping over it all the time because it's just sitting in the living room. So how do we unpack that and put it all away and process it and sort of unlearn some of these behaviors and stories and skills that we've learned over time that aren't serving us in our relationship today, so that we can show up as our best self in our relationship, which makes our relationship so much easier.
And the thing about it is, those triggers and those things from your past aren't necessarily your fault. Like, they happen and you learn them throughout your journey, but they become your responsibility to deal with them. They're now yours, even though they weren't your fault that you got them. But now that you have them and you're holding them, what do you do with them? It's your responsibility. And the thing about it, when you join forces with someone else, is, I have these triggers and they're my responsibility to deal with. They're also my responsibility to communicate, so that she knows that I have these triggers and these things, so that she can do her best to not trigger them while I am still working to deal with them. Mm-hmm. And so it's 100% responsibility for me to communicate and to deal with these things, but it's also her responsibility to then also try not to push those triggers or do something with those triggers that are going to set me off. So it's a 200% responsibility.
Yeah, throw away the buttons. There's no button pushing here. We have no
Yeah.
buttons.
Yeah.
Getting rid of
Exactly.
those is
Yeah.
very big
Yeah.
deal. So I know people are going to ask. I can hear it because I hear it in my thoughts too already. What do you do when you're giving 100%, but the other person is not? Um, so say you're in a relationship and you realize that there's something that's uncomfortable. I'll put it that way. Um, and maybe it's happened before, and you don't want it to keep happening. You want this to open up. But if the other person isn't willing to share something because maybe it's from something way back as a child that they've repressed, and bringing it up causes pain, but
Yeah.
it's pain that needs to get out of there because it's causing a problem in your relationship. How do
Yeah.
you delicately, graciously and lovingly handle something like that? And you
Yeah.
may not even know that's what's going on.
Yeah, it's tough, right? Like that, one thing is to really, if your spouse or your teammate is not sharing something, take a good hard look in the mirror and really make sure that you've created a safe space for them to want to open up. So so there's still that piece of, have I created the space that
Wow.
they're willing and ready to share with me? Is there anything I can do that can create a safer space to help open them up so that they want to share with me?
Lead by example, validate their feelings,
Lead with
like never
vulnerability.
dismiss their feelings
Yeah,
with curiosity.
there's all these things that you can just check in with yourself to make sure that you truly are showing up and taking 100% responsibility for the part that you can play in this situation.
Yeah, I really
And
like
then,
creating a safe place because I think a lot of couples don't realize that they haven't done that.
Mhm.
that's right.
They may not
Yeah,
even know why. You
right.
know, I thought it was safe. I want you to feel safe. I'm not telling everybody our business. So why do you not feel safe with me? I mean, that may come as a real shock to people. So
Well,
how
Yeah,
do you deal with that? I mean, one, you're going through this emotion now. It's like, what do you mean you don't feel safe around me? I mean, that can be devastating.
it
yeah.
can.
And there's little like insidious ways that the safety gets eroded. And one of them is sharing, like sharing with a third party, anything that goes on inside the team, inside
Right.
the marriage. Like that's definitely detrimental to creating that sort of safe space for both of you to operate in. Another really common way is when you use something that was shared. He shares something with me because he trusts me in our safe space. And then the next time we're in an argument, I bring that up and I toss that back at him.
Oh, wow.
Then he doesn't feel safe because I'm using his vulnerabilities as ammunition in our next argument. So the odds of him sharing
Good
something
word.
else vulnerable with me go way down. And if that happens again, then once it happens once or twice or three times, the chances of him ever sharing something with me again go away, because why would he share something with me when I'm going to throw it back in his face the next time I'm upset? It's not going to work. So that's one really common way that people feel unsafe to share. And another one is, and it's really subtle almost, is if he's coming to me with, doesn't even have to be a big deal thing, like something he's just feeling a certain way about a certain thing. And I'm like, well, that's not that big of a deal. Why are you like, oh, don't forget about that. That's not that important. It's not
Coming from a place of love, of
Yeah.
like trying to reassure, like, oh, you don't need to worry about that. Like, why are you so worried about that?
but I'm dismissing. He's brought something to me, and I don't think it's a big deal, but he brought it up, so it's obviously a big deal to him. And when I dismiss it, like that's not, oh, don't worry about that. That's no big deal. Then I've just invalidated
The way I feel.
the way he feels. And so the chances of him bringing something bigger to me when he feels something bigger about a certain thing go way down, because the last time it was a small thing, he couldn't trust me to just sit there and be empathetic and compassionate with him. I dismissed him.
Yeah.
And then the other thing I wanted to add, just to answer your question, is once you've checked in and you've fully, taken full responsibility, you're creating the safe space, and there's still not that meeting kind of coming towards you and sharing and leading with vulnerability and opening up, it's a difficult conversation. You're going to have that conversation of this is how I'm feeling. This is where I'm at. We need to, if this relationship is going to take the next level, which I want it to, I love you. I want to take this relationship to the next level, but there's a missing piece here. We're not connecting the way that we need to be, or that I need us to be. And so it's having that conversation, which is never easy. It's very uncomfortable, but that's going to be the next level of responsibility that's going to have to take place. And if there's still no movement, not every relationship is forever, right? And at some point, if someone is taking full responsibility over and over, leading with vulnerability and over time, the other person just isn't, they're not taking that responsibility, they're not moving forward, then it becomes a different conversation. And you have to decide, am I willing to still pull this person along and try to have this relationship, or is it not going to happen? And for my own sake, I have to now take different measures and go and look at other options, right?
Right. Now, one thing I do want to say about that is, if you're in a marriage and you're not able to get that other person to communicate, you can go to marriage counseling for yourself. How do I deal with this? How do I build my marriage, and keep going like that? So I want to ask, we've been talking about a lot of stuff. Is all of this in your book?
Yes.
Awesome.
All of it.
It is.
Yeah.
That's great. That's really great. So we've talked about, the 5 things that are in your book. Maybe kind of go through each one and give kind of a rundown on what to be expected in that book. I love that you put humor in it, because it's like, ugh, another book on marriage, and I'm going to be so bored reading it and all of this.
I promise you will not be bored reading this one. And I promise it's not like any other relationship book you've read. It's and so it's got humor. We get really vulnerable in the book. So we share a lot about, stories from us and stories from clients we've experienced, obviously all anonymous, but things that we've experienced through our journey, both personally and with clients. So we get really, really vulnerable, but we also share in a way that it's a little bit of tough love in there as well, and some humor. And so it starts out with, like I said, part 1 is kind of our story. So we open up the book with a little bit of a celebration that you're here. Let's dive into this book. And then just for context, we share a little bit about our individual stories. So Meryl shared her story, I'll share my story, and then we share our kind of early day journey together, how we got together, how we met, and just kind of to set the context. And then the rest of the book is really showing the evolution of our relationship through 5 commitments. And the 5 commitments are, like we talked about, the first one being the relationship with yourself. And so I'll let you talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. So for each commitment, we go into detail on the skills and strategies required to move through that commitment. And each of those skills or strategies or concepts has stories, like we explain it, but then it also has a story or two to illustrate what that looks like in real life. Because it's one thing to read about a concept of, like, something that we're big believers in is, assuming positive intent, giving the benefit of the doubt. But what does that look like in real life when you're sort of in the throes of whatever is happening? What does that actually look like? What does it look like from us? What does it look like from a client's example? Or like
we tell the story of where it really landed for us in our own relationship, and then we also shared how it came up with clients of ours. And so there's a story of very
story. It's actually kind of funny. So we were out for a walk one day. I was just back from a girls' night with my girlfriends, and he says, "How was your girls' night? What did you do? Did you guys just chit chat?" And he said chit chat, and I immediately felt like he was dismissing or belittling what I was doing with my girlfriends. And so my energy immediately shifts.
It's like, when you're out for a walk and it's a really nice day, it's sunny, it's blue skies, and then all of a sudden out of nowhere, the skies turn gray, the wind picks up and starts blowing gravel and branches around, and it gets a little colder, and it's like a storm's coming. That's what it felt like.
And so instead of feeling my energy and immediately responding with that same, like, what's your problem type of response, he just, you tell this part, you decided to get curious.
I just, yeah, I sensed, I could sense the storm coming. And so I just said, help me understand what just happened, because I sense a very big energy shift here. And she just laid it out and said, yeah, I feel like you're belittling my time with my friends by the use of the word chit chat. And I said, interesting. If I just asked you what you normally get up to with your girlfriends, what do you normally say to me?
And I thought about it for a second, and I was like, oh no.
And you could see the light come on, the click, the light bulb came on.
I said, we just chit-chatted. That's what I always say, because we're all in our 40s. They've all, like, everyone's got kids. We don't see each other very often. So when we get together for a night, it is just nonstop catching up on each other's lives. We often don't go anywhere. We don't eat dinner. We just sit around on couches and snack and talk. And that is all. So that is the exact words I use when I say it. I say we chit-chatted. We just chit-chatted all night.
He didn't even realize that it's a word
notice.
That she uses literally every time she comes back from a girls' trip and tells me that she chit-chatted. So I just used it back. She didn't really make the connection that that's a word that she uses.
But it sounds different coming from him than it does from inside my own head.
And so that's where we learned it. But then it led to a bigger discussion as we're making our way through the walk, is like, if not me, then who would you ever give? Like, I'm never intending to hurt you. If not me, who in your life would you ever give the benefit of the doubt to think that, we're having a conversation. If I'm asking you a question about your weekend, that I'm not trying to hurt you. I'm not trying to cause friction. And so that's where leading with curiosity and the benefit of the doubt came. And that's the story we tell in the book.
Yeah. Why would I ever assume he was trying to hurt my feelings? When I make that assumption, I lead with that energy.
If that's the story you're telling yourself.
That's the story I tell. So I lead with that energy. And then if he returns that energy, then quickly we've escalated into an argument.
And that could have easily turned to more if in that situation, me being the other person in this particular case had been like, what's your problem? Why, like, what's going on with you? Like, why are you so angry at me? Like, instead of getting curious, if I had led with that, then we would have had like pile on top of each other, and we would have had like a significant issue to deal with. But yeah, that's the story for that one.
From that point forward, we made a deal that we would always assume positive intent from the other person. We would always give them the benefit of the doubt. And if we were unsure, we would ask a question instead of making an assumption.
Lead with curiosity.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's really great, because a lot of times you're used to getting that negative part. Somebody does say something to hurt you. This is your spouse, but they've shown that they intentionally hurt you because they think it's funny, or, making light of a situation. And at that point, that's when you need to say, this has to stop. I understand you're making jokes, but you're making them at my expense. Yeah. And as a married couple, we shouldn't be doing that. Or no. I don't think we should be doing that.
No, you're a team.
Yeah. Yeah. My husband, we've gotten older. We both have gotten older. Things are going on. That he hadn't realized that he had been talking about my age in a negative way lately. And so I said something about my age at a recent place we were at, and he comes back and says something, and it's kind of like, well, how come you say it and it's okay, but if I say it, it's not okay? And I says, because I don't do it to hurt myself. He says, you do it to hurt me and make fun of me. And it was like, whoa, everything changed. And it was a realize, we said it in nicer words to each other. It wasn't quite so blunt and bold, but but he realized that he had been doing that. And so it all changed. So he doesn't use it to hurt me. And he didn't realize that he had. He thought he was just making jokes, but
Mm.
suddenly he realized maybe I was going a little too far with the jokes. And it's okay to say something. We weren't yelling at each other. We didn't get, didn't yell at him and say, "What's wrong with you? Why are you always calling me old?" You know.
Mm.
And even though things might have played in my head, I didn't say things like that
Yeah.
because I know it's not going to do any good. But it's like you just mentioned it, you've got to put up boundaries, which has been, for me personally, has been really hard because from very young I was a people pleaser. Yeah, we thought everybody had to love us and like us, and if somebody didn't, we were devastated. Well, it's
Yeah.
okay if they don't because maybe they just don't need to. They've got other things going on in their lives, and it doesn't really matter because we know who we are. And setting up those boundaries, really tough at first, but when you take the time to do it out of love and care and taking care of yourself too, because you do matter, then these boundaries are easier to do. You do it out of kindness, you don't do it harshly or rash, and you go from there. And
Yeah.
like you said, if somebody, your spouse, your partner, your best friend, whoever it is not treating you with kindness, then you need to say something because they may not even know it. You know, Sometimes they do, but either way,
Yeah.
you need to let them know, no, this stops.
Yeah.
We don't talk about each other in that type of hurting way. So I
Yeah.
love that you said you you give the other person the benefit of the doubt, but you think of the other person as being positive, saying positive things to you. Because I
Mhm.
don't think a lot of people don't think that way.
Yeah.
So that's really great you brought that up.
Thank you. And a lot of things you touched on there are actually part of the commitment to yourself, right? Like it's our second commitment because it's an important foundational piece because you can only love someone else to the degree you love yourself. Everything else has to stack on top of your relationship with you. And so like we talked about earlier with you, the stories that you tell yourself, the baggage you're bringing into the relationship, that's all part of the commitment to yourself. So is your self-worth and not settling for less than you deserve and being willing to take care of yourself and hold a boundary. And because I'm the same as you, I was a ginormous people pleaser for the vast majority of my life, and boundaries are really challenging for me. But we talk about in the book boundaries from the perspective of think of them as a roadmap to have a solid, thriving relationship with yourself and with other people, as opposed to walls that you're putting up to keep yourself safe or keep people out. They're not walls, it's a roadmap. These are the rules of engagement to having a respectful, loving, honest relationship. That's what boundaries are. And so it helped me to reframe boundaries so that I could hold them, identify them first, because the boundaries are the edges of you, so you need to know yourself well to know what your boundaries are. And then two, you need to love yourself and believe you're worthy of holding a boundary and saying no to someone else so you can actually say yes to you. And that was where I really struggled.
And
Yeah.
then
Yeah, that's
and then
good.
we take it from the commitment to yourself to obviously to the commitment to the team, your teammate. And with that, we start with 5 rules to be an unstoppable team. So we go through some very specific rules that you implement them in your relationship, you become an unstoppable team. And then we go through some very specific concepts around communication and intimacy, conflict without combat, and intimacy. And we do talk a little bit about physical intimacy, but also emotional intimacy. And that's the kind of the commitment to the team. And then we move into the commitment to fun and adventure. And that's where things really come off the rails and we get real fun and start talking about some really good stuff. But yeah, I don't want to share too many of the stories. I could talk about that section of the book. I could talk about it all day. It's probably my favorite part.
Yeah.
It's great.
And then what's that?
I said that's really great.
Yeah. And then we move into the commitment to fun the future. And that's building, because when you have the end goal, the thing where you're driving towards, if you know what you're attacking, what you're going after, and you're both going after it, it just exponentially deepens your bond. And all of the stuff that would normally keep you stuck loses its importance because your eye's on the bigger prize, the thing that you're both
Right.
achieving together.
It puts you in the same team, in the same boat, like rowing in the
Rowing
same
together.
direction.
You've got a shared common vision. It's almost like an us versus the world energy that you now have, like
Oh,
you're
yes.
shoulder to shoulder going after this thing, and it gives you something to like common ground to like go after. And so that's kind of how we wrap it up with the commitment to the future.
Yeah,
And
I agree with that. I know there's been times in our marriage when it seems like we're kind of stagnant. We're each doing our own thing. You know, it happens as you get older. But when a crisis arose, we were in it together. We were there. I mean, it was just amazing how we're working together to do this. And then you think, well, why can't we do that every day? And it's like, well,
Yeah.
that's a lot of energy, one. But maybe you don't have a common goal. Maybe we're not
Yeah.
working towards something. And so maybe we need to step back and look at, have we become so busy in our own personal lives that we've forgotten to, what are we going after together? And it's important to look at that too. I have to say this. I've been wanting to say this, but I have to say it now. This book is not just a book for marriage and relationships. This sounds like a book that if I want a really good story and a juicy story, I need to pick it up and start reading through it. I love it that you put your own personal lives in there and talked about those things, because man, that's a good read just on its own.
For sure.
It's real life,
There is
right?
some good stories in there.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of takeaways that you can apply whether you're in a marriage or not. It's obviously it's called the 200% marriage, but like we said at the outset, you could replace that with any relationship, the 200% relationship. And that includes the relationship with yourself. Like there's
I
a
was
ton of
just
stuff in
thinking
there.
that. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a ton of stuff in there that, you know, anyone who's not in a relationship can get a lot from the book as well.
Mhm.
For sure. Yeah. Even if it's just a chuckle.
Well, that's good. You've got what are all the elements? You've got comedy in there, you've got drama, you've got suspense, maybe a little bit of I don't know, what are some of the other things that you look for? Mystery in a
Drama.
Mhm.
yeah,
Drama, a
yeah.
little drama in
It's
there.
all there. That's
Yeah, it's all there.
that's amazing. So
Yeah.
the really big question is, where can readers find your book?
Well, the book officially launches January 14th, but
Awesome.
the pre-order will launch in a couple of weeks, a week or two, I
Yeah,
think.
like I think it's in the next week or two.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So like mid-December, pre-order will be mid-December sometime. And then the actual official launch will be January 14th.
Yeah. So they
Oh,
can reach
that's
out to us
wonderful.
on social media, and we have a pre-launch list. Like
Yeah.
we're emailing updates to people.
Oh, we've got stories that didn't even like we
Yeah.
have a couple stories that didn't make the book that are hilarious, and some behind the scenes stuff.
And you know, so we've got an email a week kind of thing that just shares kind of some behind the scenes stuff of what happened while we were writing it, some of the stuff that didn't make it into the book that
So
they're funny stories, but they just didn't fit. And so we kind of tell some of that. And then, you know, one of the biggest fears we had while writing the book, we kind of share that and how we overcame it. And so,
okay, you have to tell me that one, because that definitely goes with this and with wisdom on the front porch. What was one of those fears?
the biggest fear for us was, and, you know, it wasn't related to like deadlines or, is it going to be good? Will people like it? It's actually a really good book. I'm 100% like it'll change
Awesome.
it'll transform your life. The biggest fear for us was what our families would think and
It is a tough one.
how they would take it, because like we talked about early on in this conversation, when you're talking about your own journey, you're also including other people's messiness a little bit, right? Like we talk about our relationship role models and how they weren't the strongest. And so some of those people are gonna read the book. Well, some of them will, some of them won't. Some of them probably won't, to be honest with you. They probably don't want to see it. They're probably a little bit afraid of what it does say.
Yeah.
The thing is that we told it.
Good fear. I sorry to interrupt, but that is a
No.
really great fear because I've had people come up to me. It's like I have my story and I've conquered, whatever's gone, I've got this great life now, but I did not have this really great life before. And I really want to tell my story because I want to help other people pull out of that and know that there is hope and find ways that they can get to where they need to be that whole, complete person and
Yeah.
happy. But they are so afraid to write their story because they know their story, as you said, is going to include other people and the people around them. And I know one person waited until the main person was passed away before they wrote their book, but there's other people that haven't. And I've talked with other authors who have told their story with their family and they've told me what's going on. So I really want to know, what did you do about that fear? How did you talk about it? That, yeah, this is a real fear. What do we do now? And then what did you decide?
Yeah.
Well, in the end, we decided that we were telling our truth, our experience of our lives, our experience of the situation. We're not telling anyone else's story. We're telling our story as we lived it. And we were
and from the perspective that we're the main characters and there are some supporting characters, and this is our view of what happened. And we told it from our perspective.
And we obviously did our very best to be, obviously we were very respectful of it. And it's interesting because I actually found, because my dad passed just over a year ago, and I found that part hard to write, that part, about my parents' divorce without him being here. Like he won't be able to read it. Like,
Oh, wow.
I felt a lot of pressure to, for his legacy and his reputation and his name. I really felt a lot of pressure to honor that. And so I would have found that easier if he hadn't already passed away. I think I would have found that a little easier if he was still around. But because he's not, I was really, I took that burden on, and I tried really hard to honor him in the story, but still being respectful and honest to the experience that I had.
So I have a question for you about that. And I'm sorry, Craig, I'll let you talk
go
in
ahead.
a minute. So hang on to that thought. So I'm wondering, I'm a very curious person. I never really knew how people thought. My mom used to ask me, what do you think people thought? And I told her one time, she goes, they would never think that. And I thought, well, that's weird because that's what I think. So I like to find out how people think. In my mind, I'm wondering, the people that have not passed on are able to come to you and give you their opinion. Do you think it was hard because he's gone and he can't say anything to you? Is that maybe what it is, or is there something else that's
I
going
think it's a
on?
little bit that I think Dad would have read it. Dad was not a reader, but I think he would have read our book. And I would have loved to get his thoughts. But I just, it was a messy situation. Like their separation, their breakup was messy. And I had a really great relationship with my dad and did right up till the end. So I didn't want to leave readers with the impression that I didn't have a good relationship, or that this one big bump in our lives defined everything, because it didn't. So I felt a lot of pressure to make sure that it didn't leave other people thinking that he was a bad guy, that we didn't have a good relationship, that he's a human being, as we all are, and we all make mistakes, and that we still had a great relationship, and I still loved him very much.
Oh, that's really great. Thank you so much for saying that, because that makes total sense then. Is you need the readers to know what really was going on. And I get the feeling that that's throughout your whole book. You really want the readers to understand, we're not just telling one side of the coin, we're going to tell the other sides, but we're going to give you all the information. We're not just going to leave it all up to you to figure it out on your own.
Yeah, we try to take a really no BS approach to this, that
Oh, good.
none of it's easy. It's all messy, but this is how we figured it out.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Okay, Craig, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, it's all good. It was a good follow-up question. It was the right call for sure. I was just going to add to what Mary was saying is that, we told it from our perspective, and because we're both writing it together, we were able to kind of check in with each other on how we were because we're both dealing with similar things, right? With our families and the relationship role models and the worry, the fear of what others are going to, those people are going to think about this book. So we check in with each other and have that conversation. And, where we ended up was, one, we're being super respectful and we're telling it from our perspective, but also our mission is greater than the opinions of a couple people in our life. Our mission to help others is bigger than that. And when we really kind of solidified that and kind of hung on to that, that's when we realized that it's not just about us. It's not just about a couple people in our life. It's bigger than that. And so telling our story has a bigger meaning, and there's a mission behind it. And that outweighed the opinions of one or two people in our lives. And so when we were able to kind of take that approach and that thought to it, it helped us, because it's like, yeah, one or two people might be fine. They might not even read it. In fact, I have a feeling that some of these people in our life aren't going to read it. But the fact is that someone is, and someone's going to get help because of what they read. And so that always outweighed that. And so we had to just keep talking about that and keep that front of mind. And that's how we kind of pushed through.
We also got some objective third-party perspective too. Like, we've had a couple of friends read it, and then like, does this come through? Does this come across? And so that helped too.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I love my beta readers when I've got a book going on. They make such a difference. And they bring a perspective that maybe you didn't even know was there in your book. My recent book, Baxter's Heart, that I'm getting ready to release, is the same way. They read the book. I wrote it with this in mind, and they read it. And all of a sudden, this whole other world opened up from their eyes. And then I had a couple more people read it. And even more. I mean, it was just amazing. And it's like, I had no idea that this would serve so many different people on so many levels. And I see that with your book. I see that listening to you talk, hearing about how you are being respectful, but you're also being honest. You're telling the truth. You're showing real life situations instead of textbook answers or typical answers, what everybody else would say. So that's really great. This sounds, hurry up and get the book done.
Yeah, I know. That's how I feel too.
Yes, it's done.
January.
Yeah. I can't wait to get it.
That's just great. And I think it would be great for people that aren't in a relationship, so they know where they're at.
Yep.
Everybody's in a relationship with themselves, so it sounds like a really great book to read to find out about yourself. Am I ready for a relationship? How am I with my relationship with myself? I didn't even think about things like that years ago. And
so true.
And it's like, what do you mean a relationship with myself? Well, what are the stories that I tell myself in my thoughts? How do I treat me? Because how you treat yourself is how you're going to let other people treat you. And think about it, sometimes we're pretty hard on us. And is that really the way you want other people to be? I remember somebody telling me one time, I actually think it was in a Bible study, and they were talking about relationships and friendships and things like that, and some of the relationships and the Bible stories. And it's like, now the things you tell yourself in your mind, would you say that to your very best friend? And your first reaction is, no way. And it's like, then why are you saying it to yourself? And you really have to stop that. And once you stop telling yourself those things and start treating yourself like you would want to be treated from your best friend, what a difference it makes. And then that makes more healthier relationships with others. And it already puts boundaries in place that you don't even have to put in place because they're already there, because that's how you treat yourself. So this book sounds really great. You've got single people, people in relationships, married people, people that maybe have gone through divorce and want to just say, that was really tough. I've gone through divorce and it's really tough. So how do I make sure that my next relationship, once I finally do decide that maybe I could have a relationship, how do I make sure that it's the best relationship it can be and not have all of this other stuff going on? And
Yeah.
how do I deal with my own baggage that I don't bring it and put it on the other one? That's one thing my husband did say to me, just the first few months we were married, is don't put what that other person has done to you onto me. That is not where I'm coming from. And that's,
Take some
everybody
work.
bringing
Yeah.
their own mess together and
For sure.
the filters and stuff. And I didn't realize that I'd done that. That wasn't even my thought process at all. But I put it in check to make sure that I never did that after that point. And hopefully I didn't. We're still
Yeah.
together, so must be good.
Yeah. Yeah, it's such a great point. Like it's a book that even if you're not in a relationship, at some point you're going to be, and everyone's in a relationship, like you said, with yourself.
Yeah.
But even if you're not in a relationship with another person at the current time, at some point you might be. And it's a great book for even just preparing for those relationships with other
Yeah.
people, but also the relationship with yourself. There's lots of gold in there. So yeah.
So I love it that this book is also a really great read, because the other thing I'm thinking about is maybe you don't need this book. Maybe you've got a great relationship. Maybe things are going great, or you just haven't hit any road bumps or anything yet. But you might know somebody who is in a tough relationship, or someone who is not getting along with the boss or the coworkers. And it's like, all right, look at these 5 steps. These are things you can share with them. You don't necessarily, definitely give them a book. We need to promote your book, but if you read it, then you have tools in your tool belt to say, I've read in this book and they gave me this story of their life. Sometimes just sharing someone else's story helps somebody else. So now, as a reader that's read this book, you can say, hey, have you thought about this? Is this something that you can work on and go from there? I love that you call it the 200% marriage, because it is. You're each giving 100%, and maybe you're not receiving 100% back. And sometimes you have to say that's okay, because some days I'm not going to want to give 100% myself. So we need to take care of each other in that way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So tell us all again, how do we get a hold of you or get a hold of the book? Where do we go to from here?
Yep. You can get a hold of us on, well, we're in the usual places, but we have a lot of fun on Instagram. We're at Meredith and Craig. We're at Meredith and Craig on LinkedIn. I think we're also at Meredith and Craig on TikTok, but we're just getting started there. And then from the book, if you want to get on the list to get some of those behind the scenes stories and get the pre-order link when it's ready, that is at 200percentmarriage.com/in-the-loop.
I love that. Oh, that's great. Thank you
Yeah.
both so much for being on our show and sharing from your hearts, but sharing your great stories.
Thank you
Thank
for
you.
having us. This was a lot of
It
fun.
was an honor and it's so much fun. So thank you for having
Oh,
us.
great, great. Well, there you go, our audience and our other front porch sitters. We've always got a chair open for you here on my front porch. Go out to 200%.com, is that right?
200percentmarriage.com.
200percentmarriage.com.
marriage.com and /in-the-loop. I love that, actions with it. And you can always go to wisdomonthefrontporch.com, and we'll see you later. Thank you so much.
I hope today's conversation on reading between the words gave you a glimpse into the heart behind the book and sparked something new for your life or business.
Thank you, my front porch friends and neighbors, for pulling up a chair with me and my guest today on Wisdom on the Front Porch. Now, if you've got value from this conversation, would you do me a favor? Leave a quick review, then share it with someone you know who could use some inspiration. It helps more friends find their seat on the porch. And hey, Make sure you're subscribed so you never miss what's next. Until then, keep the porch light on for new wisdom every time you show up. Your seat's always here for you on the porch.